Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today for a real treat, especially if, like myself, you're a big fan of the late great Fred Dibnah, Bolton's very own steeplejack. Because I've come today to Ena Mill, which is in Atherton, to take a look at that chimney there behind me. Because there is a clip floating around on the internet of Fred laddering a chimney, showing you how he did it, and that bit of footage was actually filmed here at Ena Mill in Atherton. Now I've no idea which DVD or documentary that footage was taken from. It's 20 minutes in total. I will put a link into the description below of a good copy of it so you can watch it for yourself if you haven't already seen it. But if you have seen it, you'll instantly recognise the area that we're about to go and take a look at. Now, a little bit of history about the mill before we go over and take a look at the chimney. Ena Mill was constructed and completed in 1908. Sadly, in 1908, just as this mill was completed and ready to go into operation, there was a slump in the textile industry. So what they did, they mothballed it until 1913 when things picked up again, and that's when it opened. It then went all the way through to 1999 under various companies and guises. In the 1980s, I believe it was run by Carrington Viella, which is a form of wool. But in 1999, December 1999, sadly, the mill closed and it ceased being a spinning mill. It had been one of the last ones in the Wigan area. Now, it's a shame that it didn't make it into the 21st century, really, and it just missed out, but there you go. It was then turned over to warehouse and distribution, and it was being used basically as a storage place for various companies until 2010. And then two local businessmen, Simon Yates and Jonathan Addis, they decided to make it into a retail park, which it is today. They started the Ena Mill project in 2011. And in September of 2011 it was opened up to the public, and today you can visit and do shopping here. So thanks to Fred and other steeplejacks, the mill has been saved and it's still here today for us all to enjoy. Anyway, I'm now going to run a few clips from that documentary, and then we'll go and take a look at them and sort of match up some then and now shots. So come on, Hot Potters, let's go over and take a look at Ena Mill chimney, shall we?
Well, basically this is sort of a packing that keeps the ladder off the wall of the chimney, so there's room for your boots to go through, you know, on the rungs of the ladder. There's two schools of thought in this. One that, you know, tying them on with string is time consuming and all that, which it is. But the thing is, when it's being pulled up the side of the chimney, you know, by my mate here, and it bangs against something, it only busts the string, you know. Like the other school of thought is have a metal construction that's bolted to the ladder, which when that hits an iron band or something like that, it busts the bloody ladder, you see. String is cheaper than brand new ladders. So, but it does take a bit of time for tie them all on. Yeah, that's the only problem. Right. It's going to be just underneath the third rung, so there's room for your boots. They've just got to be just underneath the third rung, so there's room for your boots there. If you tie it on there, it's amazing how it gets in way. You know, it's in the wrong shop because there's no room for your feet.
So, Hot Potters, I'm now in the area where Fred would have been setting up his ladders and explaining to the cameraman why he was doing what he was doing with those wooden blocks, tying them to the ladders. I'll whip the camera around now and you'll be able to see how the area has changed slightly since Fred was here. And this is the area where Fred and Neil Carney, who by then was Fred's second man. Donald Payton had retired by then, and I think he'd passed away in 1992. So I estimate that the footage of Fred working on this chimney was around the early 1990s, because this mill closed and ceased being a spinning mill in 1999. But the reason that we know that this is the area is because of the houses, and as you can see, cars are coming in to this retail park today, and this is the entrance way into the complex, and you can just see there where that post is, the curb line, which was exactly the same back when Fred was here. The chimney's over there, but all the line painting and markings has changed here now. The only little bit that's left from when Fred was here, and maybe it would have had his ladders thrown across it, is that little bit there. That's the only bit from the original line painting here. We'll now make our way across the road and head over to the spot where Fred was laddering this iconic chimney, which, as you can see, stretches all the way up there, back in the 1990s. So I'll carefully make my way over there now.
Yeah, basically that piece of wood is just to put there to hold the ladder off the wall. Here we are drilling the first hole in you know, which is there is an hole actually there that's just been pointed up, to knocking the first dog, which will be the hole fast at the base of the first ladder, as you might say. Then goes the plug wood, which, as you can see, it doesn't go in very far, you know, but it's quite far enough, you know, it's quite safe. And that's what's termed as a dog. Then I'm going to knock in now, knocking in now. And the next stage is to the piece of rope. It's called a lashing, and it's a piece of rope about 5 foot long with a loop spliced on one end, as you can see. The next stage is to prop up a ladder and climb up it as though you were going up to clean the bedroom window. And then about 5 feet from the top of that ladder, you drill another hole, but in our case the hole's already there. You drill another hole as plumb and straight above the one below as you can get it, and insert another piece of plug wood and another dog.
So just here would have been where Fred put his first wooden block and started setting up the ladders that you've seen from that footage. Here are the plug holes that he was working on. He was knocking this one out here. And as he'd worked on this chimney in 1989, which you could see from one of the tags that he'd put, on the chimney, you could just make it out there in the footage. And then there was one below it, so he's worked on this previously. He didn't have to do all the hard work of actually chiseling it out, he just had to take the cement out. And I'm assuming that that bit of cement there is what Fred used to patch it back up. Unfortunately, the tags have long since gone. Those very ornate tags, the only little bit is there's a little bit of cement left from one of them here. What Fred should have done, he should have chiselled the face off these bricks and recessed it a bit and then filled it with mortar and then put his initials in, and it would have lasted a lot longer. There's another one here that you can see. In that footage, this little bit of paintwork was still here as well. It's surprising that that has survived. Also, I noticed that at the back of Fred, this area here was flooded, and it's been raining here recently, and indeed it's flooded today, so it looks like this has always been a little spot that's been prone to flooding. This area of lightning conductor here, up to the greeny yellowy bit, that has been replaced since Fred's day, as you can see where it was originally attached. They sort of cut that bit out and changed it, but other than that, pretty much the chimney is as it was when Fred was stood here. Now, one thing that I do think is rather nice is if we just make our way around here, there's just underneath this sign that advertises Ena Mill that they've attached to the chimney, there's a little blue plaque and if we zoom in on it, we can see that it says Fred Dibnah, MBE, born 29th of April 1938, a much loved steeplejack, worked here on this chimney at Ena Mill. And it's nice that the owners who own this mill today have paid tribute to him. There's the old weighbridge. You don't see that in the Fred footage, but it's nice that the people who own this mill today have retained all these features. Now if we just go around this side, where Fred chose to ladder it from that side, it looks like the modern day steeplejacks have chosen to set it up, the ladders, from this side, and these are the modern day hooks, where Fred used dog hooks knocked into wood. Today they're just eye hooks. I don't think Fred would have trusted his life to a piece of plastic roll plug like that. But they go all the way up. If you look at this area on Google Street View, which the van did come round here, you can see that there was a ladder attached from about where my camera is now, quarter way up, all the way up to the top. They'd removed the bottom section for obvious reasons. Anyway, we'll now make our way back around the other side of the chimney, and we'll see if we can line up any then and now shots from that little bit of footage. Now another location that you can easily line up from that bit of footage with Fred is this building just in the background there. The camera kept panning back to Neil Carney at the time, who was pensively looking up the chimney, watching Fred work up there. I'll whip the camera around now and you'll see that indeed it is the same building, although it's looking a little bit worse for wear these days. And there it is, Hot Potters. That's the same building that was behind Neil Carney. As you can see, the doors have had a lick of paint. They're no longer blue with a white frame, but that's still the same building. Just behind the building there is Atherton Fire Station. And this area here is what would have been the engine part of Ena Mill back in the day. That tall building there that was captured every now and again in the documentary. That's where the engine was. Today it makes pianos, apparently. I bet Fred would never have guessed that. Right then, I'll now move further over into the car park and we'll take a look at the bit of footage where he's right at the top, up near the crown, and then very distinctive green and white bands that adorn Ena Mill chimney. Now today, Ena Mill chimney boasts its name down the side so it can be seen for miles around, but that's not original. That was added when this became a retail park. It's not built in to the chimney at all. That the letters are sadly stuck on the side, but just above it there, that green and white banding, that's original, as is the capping and the oversailers.
Hear it how it's addled, holler, you know. It's a shame, really. Getting near the top, it's always like that, you know. I think this time a few iron bands might be called for, you know, to screw it together a bit. A bit of me pointing come out up there on them big copings. Can you see it? 6 inches off the lightning conductor. Not bad that though, it's a long time since I did it. some of them are loose. It's a trifle huddled around that area. I don't think the full 9-inch headers, they're only halves, you know. Well, an header is a brick on end, like that should be. But I don't think it is. They wouldn't sound as holler if it were a full 9-inch brick going in. It's only half of one, I think. I'm only surmising. These are my dog holes that support my scaffold when I'm putting the scaffolding up.
And those are very distinctive green and white bricked bands that Fred was working on. He was just more over to the left hand side as I'm looking at the chimney now. And he said that all that was addled, and I can believe it is, because I agree with him that they wouldn't have used full bricks on that decorative bit. They would have cost a lot of money, the bricks that they was using. So what they would have done, they would have used what they call snap headers, which is a brick that goes in, as Fred explained, lengthways, and they would have just cut the bricks in half, so they only needed half the amount. And that's why it sounds very hollow when you get up there and tap it with an hammer. According to Fred, I of course have not been up there. And you do have to admire Fred and the Steeplejacks who have worked on this chimney over the years, because that is why this mill retains its original crown and the oversailing caps. Not many of the former mills in Lancashire indeed have the chimney at all, but those that do, they've been reduced in art due to the top becoming very fragile and brittle, having the Great British weather thrown at them over the years. But this one does have its original crown, and that's a bonus really. The mill is pretty much in the condition and the style when it was built back in 1908, which, as I say, is amazing. Now, another nice little touch that the current owners have put on this mill is that letter E at the top, and the reason for that is the locals used to refer to this mill as E Mill. That was the local name for it. They didn't give it its full title of Ena Mill. They used to refer it as E Mill, and it's nice that Simon Yates and Jonathan Addis have acknowledged that by putting the letter E up there. At the other side of it though, you can see the very impressive and distinctive water tower. And it's really good what they've done with this mill. They've tried to keep it as original as possible. Sadly, what happened to a lot of these former cotton mills is they would be turned over to warehousing, and little bits would get knocked out of them, and they would get adapted very poorly in some cases by whoever was renting the space out, and eventually the old mill would end up looking nothing like it did when it was first built. But this one here in Atherton, it's as good as when it was built by the Ena Spinning Company back in 1908. And another little feature that was here when Fred was here is that light that you can see there, just in the middle of the chimney there. Now, it would have had one of the old sodium bulbs, the old orange bulbs back in Fred's day. They've had to change that. One of the reasons all your local councils are changing over to LED, it's not because they really want to save money, it's because you can't get hold of those orange bulbs anymore, but that's fodder for another video. Anyway, we'll now whip the camera around and slowly wrap this video up, I think. Well, lot potters, that'll just about do it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video taking a look at Ena Mill here in Atherton behind me, and following in the footsteps of the late great Fred Dibnah, who worked on this mill chimney throughout the 80s right through to the 90s. Now, before I go, I just want to share a little bit of my own history with this mill behind me, because back in 1983 a very young Mr H was brought here on a school trip. We've been learning about the Victorians, a subject very close to Fred's heart, and the textile industry. And what our teacher at the time, he'd managed to secure a trip out to this mill. It was one of the last ones that was working in Wigan at the time. It was still operating as a cotton spinning mill at the time. So he was able to go through, and a lot of the original Victorian features was still in there. Now, I must admit that as a child in single figures, just getting into double figures, it didn't really register with me. I didn't have the interest and passion for history that I have now. But one thing that did stick in my mind, Hot Potters, was how hot and noisy it was for the working conditions inside. And I remember him telling us at the time, our teacher, he said that a few of you may end up working in a place like this when you grow up. Little did we know at the time that the textile industry in the UK would go belly up. But I remember thinking to myself, no way, not me, sir, type of thing. And I then went into the construction industry, didn't I? More fool me. But another thing that sticks in my mind was after we'd had our little trip and our tour of the mill, we was taken into the works canteen, and there they had all these Tunnocks tea cakes piled up for us, and cans of Bear's Strike Cola. Now, Strike Cola was discontinued by Bear's sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. They simply rebranded it as Bear's Cola. So I'm going to enjoy these items of comestibility, as I did back in 1983, but I always wondered why it was Bear's products that they had in the canteen there. And it turns out, Hot Potters, that Bear's used to have a factory just round the corner from Ena Mill. It's now an housing estate, sadly. It closed, I believe, around 2006, and it was turned into, inevitably, housing. But that site where Bear's factory used to stand is now aptly known as Cotton Fields. That's fodder for another video. Anyway, Hot Potters, I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm going to head off back to the old homestead now and edit up all this footage ready for your edification. So, until the next time, when hopefully I'll see you on the next one, it is bye-bye for now.